He called me a thief at 9:12 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just finished brewing my second cup of coffee. My phone buzzed with a notification. Subject line: Urgent internal notice, data breach and termination. I tapped it. Open, expecting some IT protocol memo. Instead, I read my own name in bold, all-caps font, followed by the words, "Was terminated this morning after discovery of deliberate data theft, falsified reports, and unauthorized access to confidential financial files." I froze. My hands went cold. The ceramic mug slipped from my grip and shattered on the floor. I stood there in my kitchen, barefoot, heart pounding, as the email continued. "We are currently auditing all projects associated with Ms. Monroe. Employees are not to engage or discuss this situation until further notice. Legal teams have been informed. Within 5 minutes, I couldn't log into my work email. My Slack channel went dead. My keycard access was revoked. I got a call from the building security saying my belongings were being boxed and would be mailed. I didn't even get to say goodbye to my team or explain. The word thief had already gone viral across the company, but I wasn't the one who stole anything. The man who fired me, Daniel Crestwood, had been in charge of Halbridge & Co. for barely a year. He had charm, he had suits tailored to intimidation, and he had no clue how to do my job. I was the financial analyst responsible for cross-checking quarterly reports before investor release, until I noticed something that didn't add up. Subtle inconsistencies, repeated vendor names, shadow companies. So I asked questions. Big mistake. 2. Weeks before that email, I'd stayed late one night, going through a stack of reports Daniel had handed me personally. I wasn't supposed to look too closely, but I did. And what I found wasn't just a few typos. It was outright fraud. Millions rerouted. Fake projects listed as expenses. A consulting firm that didn't even have a website, but somehow charged us $200,000 a quarter. I didn't run to HR. I didn't scream to the press. I did what any loyal employee would. I scheduled a quiet meeting with Daniel. He smiled the entire time, told me how sharp I was, promised to look into it. Then the next morning, he ghosted me. The following Monday, I was locked out of one of the accounts I used daily. By Wednesday, IT had disabled my access to archived records. And now, Friday morning, he had painted me as a criminal and sent the message to 300 employees. My inbox was already filling with texts from co-workers. OMG Ariel. What happened? Is this real? I didn't believe it, but legal told us to stay quiet. No one offered help. No one stood up for me. I sat on the floor next to the shattered mug, pulled my knees to my chest, and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. Somewhere in the apartment, the heater hummed softly, but all I could hear were the words, "data theft." My mother called crying. My landlord emailed asking about rent. My best friend, well, ex-best friend now, Jess, who worked in the same building, didn't even message. That silence hurt more than the lie. But after the tears, something else took over. Focus. Because Daniel had taken my reputation, my job, and nearly my sanity. But he didn't know one thing. I had the originals. Printed files. Dated spreadsheets. Audio memos. I even had a backup of our internal Slack threads and screenshots of emails he thought were deleted. I stood up, opened the narrow closet near my front door, and pulled out a dented metal lockbox. Inside were stacks of manila folders labeled in my careful handwriting, Q2 discrepancies, phantom vendors, transaction trails. I sat at the kitchen table, turned on the overhead light, and began reviewing everything. He wanted me to disappear, but I wasn't going anywhere. He called me a thief in public. Now, I was going to make sure the truth came out the same way, and I knew exactly when to do it. The company's annual investors gala was in 3 weeks, and I was going to be there. Not as a guest, not as a victim, but as the woman who would bring the whole damn empire down, in front of the people who made him rich. The days after the email felt like drowning in slow motion. I didn't sleep the first night, or the second. On the third night, I passed out at 4 a.m. with files still open on my kitchen table and woke up with ink smudges on my arms and a neck stiff from sleeping upright. My phone stayed quiet, too quiet. I was used to waking up to Slack pings and calendar reminders, not silence. I reached out to 2 old colleagues, Sarah from marketing and Chris from procurement. Neither responded. A third, Mike, who used to joke that I saved his numbers every quarter, read my message and blocked. Me! I stared at the screen. They'd all chosen their side. I tried to walk it off. Took a long, aimless walk down to the lakefront. Watched people sip coffee, jog, laugh. Normal lives. Mine had been wrecked in under 72 hours, but grief turned to rage fast. I needed someone who knew what I was up against. Someone who wouldn't laugh me out of the room. So I messaged Carmen Lang. Carmen had been at Halbridge since before it went public. Everyone called her the quiet dagger. Sharp, discreet, never emotional. She had been promoted to board advisor 2 years ago. She rarely came to the office, but I remembered the day she pulled me aside after a presentation and said, "Don't let pretty smiles fool you. Always watch the footnotes." I wasn't sure if she remembered me, but I sent her a brief, professional message. "Ms. Lang, I believe I was fired to cover up financial fraud at Halbridge. I have evidence, and I'm willing to speak to the board privately. I only ask for 5 minutes. Ariel Monroe." No response. I waited all day. By 10 p.m., I gave up, shut down my laptop, and sat on my floor staring at the ceiling. My heart was racing again. I couldn't calm down. Then the knock came. 3 slow taps. Not on my door, on my window. I jolted upright. I live on the 2nd floor. There's no fire escape. No one should be out there. I crept over and looked through. The blinds. Nothing. Just my own terrified face reflected in the glass. The next morning, I received an anonymous email. No subject line. Just an attachment labeled monroetranscript.wev. I hesitated. Scanned it with antivirus software first, then clicked play. Daniel's voice came through, low and amused. "She's too nosy. Thought she could play hero. We'll give her the villain edit instead." No one listens to a disgraced analyst, especially not a woman who made errors in judgment. That's what legal called it. God, they're good. This will be clean. Done by Friday. I froze. The audio had a timestamp from 3 days before. The email went out. My hands shook as I replayed it 3 more times. My head was pounding. Someone had recorded Daniel. Someone wanted me to have this. Was it Carmen? I emailed her again. No reply. Instead, 3 hours later, a direct message popped up in my old encrypted Proton Mail inbox. Username, Mirrored Eye. Check the Gala schedule. He's unveiling a merger that doesn't exist. Thought you might want a ticket. Attached was a .pdf invite to the annual Halbridge Investors Gala at the Atrium Grand Hotel, 3 weeks away. Formal dress, press coverage, live broadcast. I blinked at the message. Who was this? How did they have access to Daniel's voice? Why help? Me, I typed, "Who are you?" No response. I sat back in my chair, adrenaline crashing through me. That's when I made the decision. I was going to that gala. I was going to walk in the room Daniel ruled and drop the truth like a lit match. But first, I needed help. I called Maya. My cousin was a wedding planner turned event fixer. She could bluff her way into the White House with nothing but a clipboard and a Bluetooth headset. More importantly, she didn't ask questions when I said I needed to fake a vendor badge and run a covert tech setup at a high-profile gala. We met that night in her office. "You're telling me this guy framed you, wiped your name out, and is now throwing a party?" she said, raising an eyebrow. I nodded. "He thinks I'm buried." She leaned back. "So let's dig you out. But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. No half-truths, no shaky video on a phone. You walk in like you belong. You speak, and when you do, no one should be able to look away. Over the next 10 days we planned, I went over every document, every fake invoice, every altered report. I built a timeline. I cross-referenced dates, meetings, statements. I burned copies to encrypted flash drives, cloud backups, and a dead-drop phone that never left my side. Maya created a duplicate staff badge and a forged entry in the vendor list. I would go in as Ariana Miller, Presentation AV Tech. Even rented me a discreet wireless mic and found a backdoor way into the AV system. But as we prepared, something shifted. I started noticing cars parked too long across the street. My apartment Wi-Fi began glitching at 2 a.m., always the same time. Someone tried to log into my cloud account from a New York IP. I switched to offline storage immediately. Maya insisted I stay at her place for the week before the gala. I'm not letting you end up in a ditch because some psychopath can't handle being exposed. I didn't argue. The days leading up to the gala felt like waiting for war. And then, 2 days before the event, I got a response. Carmen. Her email was short. I've seen what you sent. I believe you. Don't trust anyone at the board. If you speak, make it public and undeniable. I'll be in the room. That was all I needed. The night before the gala, I stared at myself in the mirror. Black dress, hair pinned, mic clipped beneath the collar, badge in hand, flash drive around my neck. I whispered the words I had rehearsed for days. You called me a thief, but I kept the receipts. Then I looked into my own eyes and added, and tonight, I'm taking your empire apart, one spotlight at a time. The moment I stepped through, the glass doors of the Atrium Grand Hotel, the air changed. Soft jazz filtered through the marble atrium. Crystal chandeliers bathed the lobby in golden light. Waiters moved like choreography across the crowd. Dark suits, white gloves, silver. Trays balanced with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. At the far end, an archway led into the grand ballroom, where Hallbridge & Co.'s was about to celebrate what they believed would be their biggest financial announcement to date. No one even glanced at me. Maya's forged vendor badge was clipped too, my dress just below the collarbone. AV technician, presentation prep, it read, in the same serif font used on the other name tags. I walked like I'd done this 1,000 times, calm, slightly hurried, focused. The key was not to linger, not to look lost, and not to make eye contact with anyone from the company. I had 30 minutes before Daniel went on stage. According to the event program, his keynote address was scheduled for 8:15 p.m. sharp. I knew the layout. Maya had shown me every camera angle, every door, every vulnerable port in the AV booth. The files were already on a secure USB, encrypted, but ready to autoplay once inserted into the right system. My first stop was the presentation console. It was tucked behind a velvet rope on the left side of the ballroom stage, out of sight from the audience but fully visible to staff. I walked there quickly, clipped the rope open like I belonged, and nodded to the security guard nearby. He barely looked at me. Behind the console, I breathed slowly, hands steady. I pulled out the flash drive from my jacket pocket, matte black, labeled with a tiny white star, Maya's symbol for Go Loud. I inserted it into the port beneath the primary control monitor. The system beeped. A dialog box popped up. Autoplay sequence loaded. Playback begins at trigger event. Slide 4, merger reveal. Perfect. I closed the console, locked it, and stepped back out. That's when I heard his voice, Daniel Crestwood. He stood 10 feet away, laughing with 2 older investors. His hair was slicked back like always. His tuxedo was tailored to intimidation, and his smile was a polished weapon. Every part of him screamed, untouchable. He hadn't seen me. I turned my face slightly and moved toward the far edge of the ballroom. If he recognized me, the plan was over. He'd shut it all down, have security escort me out before I could speak. But for now, I was still invisible. Still just the girl he ruined. I checked my watch. 59 p.m. 16 minutes to curtain. I moved into the shadows of the side corridor, near the back of the room. From there, I could see the stage, the giant LED screen, and the tables set for media and investors. The room pulsed with tension, the anticipation of a deal no one truly understood, dressed up in glamour and champagne. Then I saw her, Carmen Lang. She sat at table 2, just left of center, wearing a navy blue suit dress and no jewelry. Her posture was perfect, her expression unreadable. But as I scanned the room and returned to her face, she blinked once, slowly, and nodded. She saw me. She was ready. 12 p.m. The lights dimmed, a soft hush fell over the room. Then a booming voice echoed from the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man steering Halbridge & Co. into the future, our CEO, Daniel Crestwood. Applause erupted. I felt my fingers curl into fists at my sides. Daniel walked to the podium like a king. His speech began like all the others. Gratitude, progress, transformational investments. I barely listened. My focus was on the screen. The file was tied to slide 4, the moment he would announce the merger with Cytex Holdings. A merger that didn't exist. 18 p.m. He tapped the clicker. Slide 3. Q3 performance highlights, 23% growth. More clapping. He smiled. And now for the news you've all been waiting for. He clicked again. Slide 4 appeared. Then everything changed. The screen flickered once, then froze. A moment of confusion. Daniel frowned. Tapping the remote again, the screen went black, and then a loading bar appeared in the center. A beat of silence. Then came the first image. A spreadsheet marked Vendor Payments, Q2. Next, a red highlighted note. Transferred to Shell account, D. Crestwood Holdings, LLC. Gasps. A woman in the front row raised a hand to her mouth. Next came audio. Daniel's voice playing through the ballroom speakers. She's too nosy. Thought she could play hero. We'll give her the villain edit instead. He froze at the podium. The screen continued to cycle. Emails, wire transfers, internal memos with altered figures. My name, crossed out in red, beside an internal message. Make sure Monroe gets locked out by Friday. Keep it quiet. Shouts rose from the crowd. Is this real? Turn it off. What is this? Daniel tried to override the system, fumbling at the console. But Maya's override script had locked it down. Then I stepped forward, from the corridor, into the spotlight. All eyes turned. Gasps echoed again, but this time, at the sight of me. I walked slowly to the stage, my voice calm, mic clipped beneath. My collar. You called me a thief, I said, stepping past him. I stood at the center of the stage. Daniel's face was pale. The screen behind me glowed with his fraud. But I kept the originals. A beat of silence. I turned toward the audience. You all got emails about me, but none of you asked why a mid-level analyst would be so dangerous. I wasn't stealing. I was documenting. Because the only thing more expensive than fraud is silence. Reporters stood. Phones came out. Flashbulbs burst. Carmen rose from her seat. I move to suspend Daniel Crestwood, effective immediately, she said, her voice clear. I second, came another voice. Daniel shouted, This is a stunt. She's unstable. She was fired for cause. Carmen replied coolly. Then we'll let the audit committee and the court decide. Security moved in. This time, not for me. They surrounded Daniel. As he was led away, he screamed over his shoulder. You'll regret this, Ariel. You think you won? I didn't answer. I turned back to the screen, let the evidence speak for itself. Then I walked down the stage stairs, past stunned investors and blinking cameras, and out into the cool night. The truth was out, but this was only the beginning. They didn't clap for me when I walked out of the gala. Some people gasped. Some whispered. A few stared, wide-eyed, holding their phones like weapons, filming as I passed. But most just parted like a tide, giving me a narrow path to the exit, as if I were fire walking through silk. Outside, it was raining. Not heavily. Just a cold, steady drizzle that turned the marble steps of the atrium grand slick and reflective under the lights. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't care. I kept walking. Around the corner, Maya waited in the passenger seat of her black Subaru, engine already running. I opened the door, sat down, and exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. Maya looked at me. It worked. I didn't answer. I just stared straight ahead, blinking raindrops from my lashes. She drove in silence. Back at her place, I peeled off my soaked dress and sat on the floor in a hoodie and socks, staring at my laptop screen as 1,000 notifications flooded in, emails, LinkedIn messages. Press inquiries. News sites were already running the headlines. Halbridge CEO exposed. During live gala in stunning whistleblower takedown, fraud, files, and fireworks, the woman who brought down $1 billion brand, Daniel Crestwood. Escorted out by security after viral document leak, I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt something else. Paranoia. Because now that the spotlight was on me, I didn't know who else had been standing in the dark. By morning, my face was everywhere. News anchors called me the quiet rebel. Financial blogs dissected my timeline like it was a murder mystery. Podcasters debated whether I was a hero or a PR stunt. But what none of them realized was this. I hadn't exposed everything. Not yet. Because in the chaos of unraveling Daniel's web, I'd stumbled onto something far worse. Buried in one of the financial files was a payment made not just to a shell company, but to an offshore account tied to a board member. The name had been blurred out, encrypted. But I was getting closer, and someone knew. That night, my backup drive disappeared. Gone, not misplaced, not lost, removed. I kept it in Maya's locked drawer, in a coded case only we could open. She swore she hadn't touched it. That's when the text started. Unknown number. You made your move. Now we make ours. Blocked. Another. You should have stayed fired. I called Carmen. She didn't answer. Instead, I got an email. He's not acting alone. Stay smart. More eyes on you than you think. CL. I sat on Maya's couch and stared at the message. Then I checked my bank account. 0. Every dollar I had left had been wiped from my checking and savings accounts. My investment app was locked. My Venmo flagged. Even my backup card had been declined when I tried ordering food. I was being erased, again. But this time, I wasn't going down quietly. I went to the only person I could think of. Ravi Bose, a cybersecurity consultant I once worked with on a vendor verification audit. I'd helped him get paid after the company undercut his invoice. He owed me. He met me at a greasy diner on the edge of the city, wearing a hoodie and sipping burnt coffee. I shouldn't be talking to you, he said. You're radioactive right now. Someone hacked me. I need help. He hesitated, then sighed. Bring me the device. I handed him my old phone. 2 hours later, he texted me from a burner number. They installed spyware through a fake email update link. Sophisticated stuff. Corporate level. Can you trace it? No. But I can trace who tried to cover it up. A day later, I had a name. Board member, Jonah Rusk, Carmen's peer, Daniel's mentor. The man who once funded Halbridge's IPO. I knew the name. Everyone in the industry did. But now, I had a number that matched a hidden offshore transfer, $5.8 Million routed through Daniel's shell company, which meant Daniel wasn't just a thief. He was a pawn. Jonah had been the one pulling strings, and if Daniel had burned me to protect himself, Jonah would do worse. The very next day, I received a notice from the SEC. I was being investigated for insider manipulation and illegal disclosure of private documents. I sat in the bathroom staring at the paper. They were turning the system against me. Maya found me there an hour later, knees pulled up to my chest, gripping the paper in silence. "You knew they'd fight back," she said softly. I nodded. "But what they didn't know," I whispered, "is I recorded every step." I opened my laptop, uploaded a 30-minute voice journal I'd been keeping since the day I was fired. I included audio, timestamps, and annotated records. Then I sent it to 10 independent journalists, one national whistleblower organization, and a federal investigator who'd once spoken on white-collar corruption at my university. I titled the folder, "This Isn't Just About Me." Within 48 hours, the story exploded again. This time, it wasn't just Daniel. Jonah Rusk was named. A full investigation was launched. Daniel tried to deny everything. Jonah disappeared from the media. Carmen went silent again. I was still broke, blacklisted, and being sued. But for the first time, I wasn't alone. Strangers sent messages of support. Whistleblower advocates offered pro bono legal help. A small fintech startup offered me a consulting role until you're ready to burn. The world down. But I wasn't ready to rebuild yet. Not until I finished tearing down what they built on lies. The system wasn't just fighting back, it was learning. The day after Jonah Rusk's name hit the headlines, everything changed again. My email accounts, every one of them, were locked. My passwords were reset in real time. Even my encrypted folders showed signs of tampering. The cloud backup that held my last unedited voice memo? Gone. Ravi confirmed it. Whoever was coming after me now had a full cyber forensics. This isn't just Daniel or Jonah anymore, he said grimly. They've pulled in someone bigger, someone with government contracts or offshore intel access. These are hired mercs with keyboards. I felt the walls closing in. The SEC still hadn't dropped the case against me, even though my documents had been verified. They called it standard investigative procedure. Meanwhile, no charges were filed against Daniel or Jonah, not yet. Not officially. It was all stalling tactics. They were trying to outweight me. Make me exhausted, break my will, and it almost worked. Almost. But then, something unexpected happened. A package arrived at Maya's apartment. No return address, no markings. Inside was a flash drive, labeled in bold ink. Watch this before they find you. We plugged it into an old laptop fully disconnected from Wi-Fi. Maya and I sat in silence as the video loaded. It was security footage. Grainy, time-stamped, real. First clip, Daniel and Jonah at a cigar lounge, 2 weeks before I was fired. Nah, she's digging too deep. You need to bury her. Daniel, she's a nobody. I'll make it look like she stole something and went crazy. By the time she figures it out, no one will care. Jonah, do it fast. The merger smokescreen won't last if she finds the Cayman Trail. Next clip, a recording from the Hallbridge server room. A man in a maintenance uniform, face obscured by a hat, plugs in a USB stick. Data transfers rapidly across the screen. Then, one more clip, a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Jess, my former best friend, the one who hadn't returned a single message since I was fired. She was standing in Daniel's office. Daniel, I need her gone. You worked with her. What's her weak spot? Jess, she doesn't trust easy, but when she does, she lets her guard down completely. Use her mother. That'll throw her off long enough. Daniel, perfect. I felt the blood drain from my face. Jess, the same person who once helped me write my first resume. The same person who sent me memes when I pulled all-nighters. The person who promised she believed in me had sold me out. I stood, shaky, and backed away from the screen. Maya caught me before I could fall. "You okay?" No, not even close. But I was awake now, more awake than I'd ever been. They weren't just trying to destroy my career. They were trying to destroy my mind. Gaslight me into believing I deserved it. Isolate me. Control the narrative. But this video, this was a sledgehammer to their illusion. I needed to go public again, not through news sites or quiet interviews. This time, I needed to speak directly, loud, live, with every fact, every face, every betrayal on display. I reached out to Emily Cortez, an independent investigative journalist with a history of taking down Wall Street corruption. She'd messaged me before, twice, but I'd been too cautious to respond. Now I sent her everything: the flash drive, the documents, the voice files, the betrayal clips. We met in a small cafe downtown, her coat pulled tight, eyes sharp. "This will make them come after you harder," she warned. "They already have." She nodded. "We'll go live in 3 days. I want you there." I agreed. Then I went home and cried. Not because I was scared, but because it was Jess, the last person I'd ever trusted inside that building. The next morning I got a text from an unknown number. "If you go live, we release the video of your breakdown. You'll never work again. Last warning." Attached was a still frame of me, sobbing in a bathroom stall, back when I was first locked out. I remembered that moment. I'd thought I was alone. Someone had recorded it, held it, weaponized it. I stared at the image. Then I typed back, "Post." It. But when you do, make sure to include the part where I stood back up. No reply. I met Emily 2 days later at the studio. A quiet setup, black backdrop, one camera, one mic, no cuts, no edits. She asked, "Are you sure you're ready?" I nodded, and then I spoke. I told the world everything, starting from that morning with the email, all the way to the gala, the theft, the blackmail, the second betrayal, and the names. I named Daniel, I named Jonah, and, though it broke, me, I named Jess. The video aired across every platform that night. By morning, it had 12 million views, and finally, the dam broke. The Department of Justice announced a full investigation into Halbridge's financials. SEC lifted the suspension against me. Arrest warrants were issued. Daniel tried to run. He was picked up at a private airstrip in Connecticut. Jess deactivated all her social media. Jonah released a statement blaming Daniel for unauthorized financial decisions and vowed cooperation, but it was too late. Offshore logs traced directly to his personal account. Carmen called me. "You did it," she said quietly. "You finished what I couldn't." I asked her what she meant. She paused, then confessed. "Years ago, I found discrepancies too. I brought them to Jonah. I thought I'd be protected. Instead, I got demoted and blacklisted. I stayed quiet. You didn't." I couldn't respond. My throat closed up. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. But for the first time in months, I slept. No nightmares, no texts, no locked accounts, just silence. The good kind. The kind you earn after you've burned down every lie around you, and finally see sky. 3 weeks after the expose went live, I still hadn't returned a single call from the big firms. Not the one that offered me a 6-figure settlement to become their head of integrity. Not the one that dangled a PR campaign to rebrand me as a financial heroine. Not even the Silicon Valley firm that tried to lure me with stock options and promises of a fresh start. Because I wasn't sure I wanted a fresh start in their world anymore. The world that had stayed silent while I was dragged. The world that only called back when the story went viral, but I kept the voicemails. Not as trophies, just reminders. Maya had started sleeping again. She smiled more, joked about becoming a career hacker after all this. She even framed my fake Gala badge and hung it above her desk. "You should auction it," she said, laughing. The badge that ended a billion-dollar empire. But I knew it wasn't over. Not for me. Daniel was out on bail. His smug face splashed across news articles with the headline, "Disgraced CEO plans defense strategy, claims ex-employee had personal vendetta." Jonah had lawyered up so fast the press barely kept pace. Jess? Gone. Off-grid. Not even a whisper online. Carmen retired quietly. But I was still standing, still in the eye of the storm, and I needed to finish the story on my terms. So I took one. Last meeting. It wasn't with a firm or a news outlet. It was with 20 college students at a small university in Chicago, inside a dusty economics lecture hall that smelled like chalk and overachievers. They'd seen the video. Their professor had reached out. "I don't have a lot to teach them about real-world corruption," he said. "But you do." I wore jeans and a black jacket. No makeup, no script, no PR team. Just me. I stood in front of the class, cleared my throat, and said, "I was called a thief by the man who was stealing everything. He had power, money, charm, and he used all three to try and erase me. But what he didn't have was the truth. And the truth doesn't disappear. It waits, quietly, until someone's brave or pissed off enough to say it out loud." They listened, really listened. And when I finished, one girl in the back raised her hand and asked the one question no journalist ever had. "Are you okay now?" I didn't have a perfect answer, but I told her this. I still check my locks twice. I still flinch when a number I don't recognize calls me. And I still feel my hands shake when I open old files. But I'm free. And I'd choose freedom with scars over silence with chains every time. After the talk, I walked back to my apartment. Quiet, still, calm. And there, waiting on the doorstep, was a final envelope. No return address. Inside, a letter, handwritten. "You ended us, Ariel, but we're not the only ones. There are others. Keep going if you dare. No name, no signature, just a second flash drive." I held it in my hands for a long time. The old me, the analyst, the loyal employee, would have handed it to someone else. But the new me? I plugged it into my old offline laptop. Inside was a directory of 5 companies. Names I recognized, investment firms, hedge funds, some connected to Jonah's network, some bigger. Files titled Compartmentalized Flow, Ghost Assets, Shadow Equity, Proof, not just of Halbridge's rot, but a web beyond Halbridge. They thought I'd stop. They thought I wanted revenge, but I never needed revenge. I needed truth, and now I had more of it. That night, I started a new project. A quiet one, a personal one. I began building a secure database, a platform for whistleblowers to upload financial evidence anonymously. Clean, protected, untraceable. It wouldn't be flashy. There wouldn't be a Gala. But maybe the next Ariel. Monroe wouldn't have to burn her life down to be heard. Maybe she'd have a place to start. And as I typed the first line of code, I whispered the same words I'd said on stage that night. You called me a thief, but I kept the receipts. And now I was going to keep everyone's.